Little Button rose. "If you please, I've come," said a small girl, as she walked into a large room where 3 ladies sat at work. One of the ladies was very thin, one very stout, and the youngest very pretty. The eldest put on her glasses, the stout one dropped her sewing, and the pretty one exclaimed, "Why, it must be little Rosamond!" "Yes, I've come. The man is taking my trunk upstairs, and I've got a letter for Cousin Penelope," said the child, with the sweet composure of one always sure of a welcome. The stout lady held out her hand for the letter, but the little girl, after a keen look at the 3 faces, went to the old lady, who received her with a kiss, saying, "That's right, but how did you know, dear?" "Oh, Papa said Cousin Penny is old, Cousin Henny fat, and Cousin Cicely rather pretty, so I knew in 1 minute," replied Rosamond, in a tone of innocent satisfaction at her own cleverness, and quite unconscious of the effect of her speech. Miss Penelope hastily retired behind the letter. Miss Henrietta frowned so heavily that the gold-rimmed eyeglasses flew off her nose with a clash, and Cicely laughed outright, as she exclaimed, "I'm afraid we have got an enfant terrible among us, though I can't complain of my share of the compliments. I never expected to find Clara's child well-mannered, and I see I was quite right. Take your hat off, Rosamond, and sit down. It tires sister to lean on her in that way," said Miss Henny in a severe tone, with no offer of any warmer welcome. Seeing that something was amiss, the child quietly obeyed, and perching herself in an ancient armchair crossed her short legs, folded her plump hands over the diminutive traveling bag she carried, and sat looking about the room with a pair of very large blue eyes, quite unabashed, though rather pensive, as if the memory of some tender parting were still fresh in her little heart. While Miss Penny slowly reads the letter, Miss Henny works daisies on a bit of canvas with pettish jerks of her silk, and Miss Cicely leans in the sofa corner, staring at the newcomer. We will briefly introduce our small heroine. Her father was cousin to the elder ladies, and being called suddenly across the water on business, took his wife with him, leaving the little girl to the care of these relatives, thinking her too young for so long a journey. Cicely, an orphan niece who lived with the old ladies, was to have the care of Rosie, and a summer in the quiet country town would do her good, while change of scene would console her for this first separation from her mother. How she fared remains to be seen, and we need only add that the child had been well trained, made the companion of a sweet and tender woman, and was very anxious to please the parents whom she passionately loved, by keeping the promises she had made them, and being as brave as Papa, as patient and kind as dear Mamma. "Well, what do you think of it, Missy?" asked Cicely, as the blue eyes came back to her, after roving round the spacious, old-fashioned, and rather gloomy room. "It's a pretty large, dark place for a little girl to be all alone in." And there was a suspicious quiver in the childish voice, as Rosie opened her bag to produce a very small handkerchief, evidently feeling that she might have sudden need of it if someone did not speak to her very soon. "We keep it dark on account of sister's eyes. When I was a little girl, it wasn't considered polite to say rude things about other people's houses, especially if they were very handsome ones," said Miss Henny, with a stern glance over the eyeglasses at the young offender, whose second remark was even more unfortunate than her first. "I didn't mean to be rude, but I must tell the truth. Little girls like bright places. I'm sorry about Cousin Penny's eyes. I will read to her, I do to Mamma, and she says it is very well for a child only 8 years old." The gentle answer and the full eyes seemed to calm Miss Henny's wrath, for her size was her tender point, and the old house her especial pride, so she dropped the awe-inspiring glasses, and said more kindly, "There is a nice little room ready for you upstairs, and a garden to play in. Cicely will hear you read every day, and I will teach you to sew, for of course that most useful part of your education has been neglected." "No, ma'am, I sew my 4 patches every day, and make little wee stitches, and I can hem Papa's handkerchiefs, and I was learning to darn his socks with a big needle when they went away." Rosie paused with a sudden choke, but too proud to break down, she only wiped 2 drops off her cheek with the long ends of her little gray silk glove, set her lips, and remained mistress of herself, privately planning to cry all she liked when she was safely in the nice little room promised her. Cicely, though a lazy, selfish young lady, was touched by the child's pathetic face, and said in a friendly tone, as she patted the couch where she lay, "Come here, dear, and sit by me, and tell me what kind of a kitten you'd like best. I know of a sweet yellow one, and 2 grays. Our Tabby is too old to play with you, so you will want a kitty, I'm sure." "Oh yes, if I may." And Rosie skipped to the new seat with a smile which plainly proved that this sort of welcome was just what she liked. "Now, Cicely, why will you put such an idea into Rosamond's head when you know we can't have kittens round the house for sister to stumble over, not to mention the mischief the horrid things always do? Tabby is all the child needs, with her doll." "Of course you have a doll?" And Miss Henny asked the question as solemnly as if she had said, "Have you a soul?" "Oh yes, I have 9 in my trunk, and 2 little ones in my bag, and Mama is going to send me a big one from London, as soon as she gets there, to sleep with me and be my little comfort," cried Rosie, rapidly producing from her bag a tiny bride and groom, 3 seed cakes, a smelling bottle, and a purse out of which fell a shower of bright scents, also crumbs all over the immaculate carpet. "Mercy on us, what a mess! Pick it all up, child, and don't unpack any more in the parlor. 1 doll is quite enough for me," said Miss Henny, with a sigh of resignation as if asking patience to bear this new calamity. Rosie echoed the sigh as she crept about reclaiming her precious pennies, and eating the crumbs as the only way of disposing of them. "Never mind, it's only her way. The heat makes her a little cross, you see," whispered Cicely, bending down to hold the bag, into which Rosie bundled her treasures in hot haste. "I thought fat people were always pleasant." "I'm glad you ain't fat," answered the little girl, in a tone which was perfectly audible. What would have happened, I tremble to think, if Miss Penny had not finished the letter at that moment, and handed it to her sister, saying as she held out her arms to the child, "Now I know all about it, and you are to be my baby, so come and give me some sweet kisses, darling." Down dropped the bag, and with a little sob of joy the child nestled close to the kind old heart that welcomed her so tenderly at last. "Papa calls me his button rose, 'cause I'm so small and pink and sweet, and thorny too sometimes," she said, looking up brightly, after a few moments of the fond and foolish cuddling all little creatures love and need so much when they leave the nest, and miss the brooding of motherly wings. "We'll call you anything you like, darling, but Rosamond is a pretty old name, and I'm fond of it, for it was your grandmamma's, and a sweeter woman never lived," said Miss Penny, stroking the fresh cheeks, where the tears shone like dew on pink rose leaves. "I shall call you Chicken Little, because we have Henny and Penny, and the girls and Tab downstairs can be Goosey Lucy, Turkey Lurkey, and Cocky Locky. I'll be Ducky Lucky, and I'm sure Foxy Loxy lives next door," said Cicely, laughing at her own wit, while Miss Henny looked up, saying, with the first smile Rosie had seen, "That's true enough! And I hope Chicken Little will keep out of his way, no matter if the sky does fall. Who is it? A truly fox? I never saw one. Could I peep at him sometimes?" cried the child, much interested at once. "No, dear, it's only a neighbor of ours who has treated us badly, at least we think so, and we don't speak, though we used to be good friends some years ago. It's sad to live so, but we don't quite see how to help it yet. We are ready to do our part, but Mr. Dover should take the first step, as he was in the wrong. Please tell about it. I have horrid quarrels with Mamie Parsons sometimes, but we always kiss and make up, and feel all happy again. Can't you, Cousin Penny?" asked the child, softly touching the little white curls under the lace cap. "Well, no, dear, grown people cannot settle differences in that pretty way. We must wait till he apologizes, and then we shall gladly be friends again. You see, Mr. Dover was a missionary in India for many years, and we were very intimate with his mother. Our gardens join, and a gate in our fence led across their field to the back street, and was most convenient when we wanted to walk by the river or send the maids on errands in a hurry. The old lady was very neighborly, and we were quite comfortable till Thomas came home and made trouble. He'd lost his wife and children, poor man, and his liver was out of order, and living among the heathen so long had made him melancholy and queer, so he tried to amuse himself with gardening and keeping hens." "I'm glad. I love flowers and biddies," murmured Rosie, listening with deep interest to this delightful mixture of quarrels and heathen sorrow, poultry, mysterious diseases, and gardens. He had no right to shut up our gate and forbid our crossing that little field, and no gentleman would have dared to do it after all our kindness to his mother, exclaimed Miss Henny, so suddenly and violently that Rosamond nearly fell off the old lady's lap with the start she gave. No, sister, I don't agree there. Mr. Thomas had a perfect right to do as he liked with his own land, but I think we should have had no trouble if you had been willing to sell him the corner of our garden where the old summer house is, for his hens, began Miss Penny in a mild tone. Sister, you know the tender memories connected with that bower, and how terrible it would have been to me to see it torn down, and noisy fowls clucking and pecking where I and my poor Calvin once sat together, cried Miss Henny, trying to look sentimental, which was an impossible feat for a stout lady in a flowery muslin gown, and a fly-away cap full of blue ribbons, on a head once flaxen and now grey. We won't discuss the point, Henrietta, said the elder lady with dignity, whereupon the other returned to the letter, bridling and tossing her head in a way which caused Rosie to stare, and resolved to imitate it when she played being a proud princess with her dolls. Well, dear, that was the beginning of the trouble, continued Miss Penny. And now we don't speak, and the old lady misses us, I'm sure, and I often long to run in and see her, and I'm so sorry you can't enjoy the wonders of that house, for it's full of beautiful and curious things, most instructive for children to observe. Mr. Thomas has been a great traveler, and has a tiger skin in the parlor so natural it's quite startling to behold, also spears, and bows and arrows, and necklaces of shark's teeth, from the Cannibal Islands, and the loveliest stuffed birds, my dear, all over the place, and pretty shells and baskets, and ivory toys, and odd dresses, and no end of wonderful treasures. Such a sad pity you can't see them, and Miss Penny looked quite distressed at the child's loss. Oh, but I guess I will see 'em. Every one is good to me, and old gentlemen like little girls. Papa says so, and he always does what I want when I say please with my vigilant smile, as he calls it, said Rosie, giving them a sample of the most engaging sort. You funny little thing, do try it, and soften the heart of that tiresome man. He has the finest roses in town and the most delicious fruit, and we never get any, though he sends quantities everywhere else. Such a fuss over an old earwiggy arbor. It is perfectly provoking, when we might enjoy so much over there, and who knows what might happen? As Cicely spoke, she smoothed her brown curls and glanced at the mirror, quite conscious that a very pretty young lady of 20 was wasting her sweetness in the great gloomy house, with two elderly spinsters. I'll get some for you, answered Rosie, with a nod of such calm conviction of her own power, that Cicely laughed again, and proposed that she should go at once and view the battlefield. Could I run in the garden? I'd love to, after riding so long, asked Rosie, eager to be off, for her active legs ached for exercise, and the close, shady room oppressed her. Yes, dear, but don't get into mischief, or worry Tabby, or pick the flowers. Of course you wouldn't touch green fruit, or climb trees, or soil your little frock. I'll ring the bell for you to come in and be dressed for tea when it is time. With these directions and a kiss, Miss Penny, as Cicely did not stir, let the child out at the back door of the long hall, and watched her walk demurely down the main path of the prim old garden, where no child had played for years, and even the toads and fat robins behaved in the most decorous manner. It's pretty dull, but it's better than the parlor with all the staring pictures, said Rosie to herself, after a voyage of discovery had shown her the few charms of the place. The sight of a large yellow cat reposing in the sun cheered her eyes at that moment, and she hastened to scrape acquaintance with the stately animal, for the snails were not social, and the toads stared even more fixedly at her than the painted eyes of her respected ancestors. But Tabby disliked children as much as her mistress, and after submitting ungraciously to a few caresses from the eager little hands, she rose and retired majestically to a safer perch on the top of the high wall which enclosed the garden. Being too lazy to jump, she walked up the shelves of an old flower stand molding in a corner, and by so doing, gave Rosie a brilliant idea, which she at once put into action by following Tabby's example. Up this new sort of ladder she went, and peeped over the wall, delighted at this unexpected chance to behold the enemy's territory. "Oh, what a pretty place!" she cried, clasping her grubby little hands with rapture, as the beauties of the forbidden land burst upon her view. It was indeed a paradise to a child's eyes, for flowers bloomed along the winding paths, ripening fruit lay rosy and tempting in the beds below. Behind the wire walls that confined them clucked and strutted various sorts of poultry. Cages of gay birds hung on the piazza, and through the open windows of the house one caught glimpses of curious curtains, bright weapons, and mysterious objects in the rooms beyond. A gray-headed gentleman in a queer nankeen coat lay asleep on a bamboo lounge under the great cherry tree, with a purple silk handkerchief half over his face. "That's the missionary man, I suppose. He doesn't look cross at all. If I could only get down there, I'd go and wake him with a softly kiss, as I do Papa, and ask to see his pretty things." Being quite unconscious of fear, Rosie certainly would have carried out her daring plan, had it been possible. But no way of descending on the other side appeared, so she sighed and sat gazing wistfully, till Cousin Henny appeared for a breath of fresh air, and ordered her down at once. "Come and see if my balsam seeds have started yet. I keep planting them, but they won't come up," she said, pointing out a mound of earth newly dug and watered. Rosie obediently scrambled up, and was trying to decide whether some green sprouts were chickweed or the dilatory balsams when a sudden uproar in the next garden made her stop to listen, while Miss Henny said in a tone of great satisfaction, as the cackle of hens arose, "Some trouble with those horrid fowls of his. I detest them, crowing in the night, and waking us at dawn with their noise. I wish some thief would steal every one of them. Nobody has a right to annoy their neighbors with troublesome pets." Before Rosie could describe the beauties of the white bantams or the size of the big golden cock, a loud voice cried, "You rascal! I'll hang you if I catch you here again. Go home quicker than you came, and tell your mistress to teach you better manners if she values your life." "It's that man! Such language! I wonder who he's caught. That bad boy who steals our plums, perhaps." The words were hardly out of Miss Henny's mouth when her question was answered in a sudden and dreadful way, for over the wall, hurled by a strong arm, flew Tabby, high in the air, to fall with a thump directly in the middle of the bed where they stood. Miss Henny uttered a shrill scream, caught up her stunned treasure, and rushed into the house as fast as her size and flounces permitted, leaving Rosie breathless with surprise and indignation. Burning to resent this terrible outrage, she climbed quickly up the steps, and astonished the irate old gentleman on the other side by the sudden apparition of a golden head, a red childish face, and a dirty little finger pointed sternly at him, as this small avenging angel demanded, "Missionary man, how could you kill my cousin's cat? Bless my soul! Who are you?" said the old gentleman, staring at this unexpected actor on the field of battle. "I'm Button Rose, and I hate cruel people. Tabby's dead, and now there isn't any one to play with over here." This sad prospect made the blue eyes fill with sudden tears, and the application of the dirty fingers added streaks of mud to the red cheeks, which much damaged the appearance of the angel, thought it added pathos to the child's reproach. "Cats have 9 lives, and Tabby's used to being chucked over the wall. I've done it several times, and it seems to agree with her, for she comes back to kill my chicks as bold as brass. See that?" And the old gentleman held up a downy dead chicken, as proof of Tabby's sin. "Poor little chickie!" groaned Rosie, yearning to mourn over the dear departed and bury it with tender care. "It was very naughty of Tab, but, sir, you know cats are made to catch things, and they can't help it. They will have to help it, or I'll drown the lot. This is a rare breed, and I've but 2 left after all my trouble, thanks to that rascal of yours." "What are you going to do about it?" demanded Mr. Dover, in a tone that made Rosie feel as if she had committed the murder herself. "I'll talk to Tabby and try to make her good, and I'll shut her up in the old rabbit house over here. Then I hope she will be sorry and never do it any more," she said, in such a remorseful tone that the old gentleman relented at once, ashamed to afflict such a tender little soul. "Try it," he said, with a smile that made his yellow face pleasant all at once. Then, as if ready to change the subject, he asked, looking curiously at the little figure perched on the wall, "Where did you come from? Never saw any children over there before." They don't allow 'em. Rosie introduced herself in a few words, and seeing that her new acquaintance seemed interested, she added with the wheedling smile Papa found so engaging. It's pretty lonely here, I guess, so praps you'll let me peep at your nice garden sometimes if it doesn't trouble you, sir? Poor little soul! It must be desperately dull with those 3 tabbies, he said to himself, as he stroked the dead chicken in his hand, and watched the little face bent toward him. Peep as much as you like, child, or, better still, come over and run about. I like little girls, he added aloud, with a nod and a wave of welcome. I told them I was sure you did. I'd love to come, but they wouldn't let me, I know. I'm so sorry about the fight. Couldn't you make it up, and be pleasant again? Asked Rosie, clasping her hands with a beseeching gesture as her bright face grew sad and serious remembering the feud. So they've told you that nonsense already, have they? Nice neighbors they are, said the old gentleman, frowning as if ill-pleased at the news. I'm glad I know, praps I can be a peacemaker. Mama says they are good to have in families, and I'd like to be one if I could. Would you mind if I tried to peacemake a little, so I could come over? I do want to see the red birds and the tiger skin awfully, if you please. What do you know about 'em? Asked the old gentleman, sitting down on a garden chair, as if he didn't mind continuing the chat with this new neighbor. Nearly tumbling off the wall in her earnestness, Rosie repeated all that Cousin Penny had said, and something in the reasonable words, the flattering description of his treasures, and the sincere regret of the old lady seemed to have a good effect upon Mr. Dover, for when Rosie paused out of breath, he said in such an altered tone that it was evident the peacemaking had already begun. Miss Carey is a gentlewoman. I always thought so. You tell her, with my compliments, that I'd be glad to see you any time if she has no objection. I'll put my step-ladder there, and you can come over instead of the cat. But mind you don't meddle, or I might give you a toss like Tabby. I'm not afraid, laughed Rosie. I'll go and ask right away, and I won't touch a thing, and I know you'll like me for a friend. Papa says I'm a dear little one. Thank you very much, sir. Goodbye till I come again. And with a kiss of the hand, the yellow head sunk out of sight like the sun going down, leaving a sense of darkness behind when the beaming little face disappeared, though fresh stains of green mold from the wall made it rather like the tattooed countenances Mr. Dover used to see among his cannibal friends in Africa. He sat musing with the dead chicken in his hand, forgetful of time, till a ring of his own doorbell called him in to receive a note from Miss Penelope, thanking him for his invitation to little Rosamond, but declining it in the most polite and formal words. I expected it. Bless the silly old souls! Why can't they be reasonable, and accept the olive branch when I offer it? I'll be hanged if I do again. The fat one is at the bottom of this. Miss Penn would give in if that absurd Henrietta didn't hold her back. Well, I'm sorry for the child, but that's not my fault. And throwing down the note, he went out to water his roses. For a week or two, Button-Rose hardly dared glance toward the forbidden spot from her window, as she was ordered to play in the front garden, and sent to take sober walks with Cicely, who loved to stop and gossip with her friends, while the poor child waited patiently till the long tales were told. Nursing Tabby was her chief consolation, and so kind was she, that the heart of the old cat softened to her, and she actually purred her thanks at last for all the saucers of cream, bits of chicken, soft pats, and tender words bestowed upon her by the little girl. Well, I declare! Tab won't do that even for me, said Miss Henny, one day when she came upon the child sitting alone in the hall with a picture book and the cat comfortably asleep in her lap. Animals always love me if people don't, answered Button-Rose soberly, for she had not yet forgiven the stout lady for denying her the delights offered by the missionary man. That's because an eye-mouse can't see how naughty you are sometimes, said Miss Henny tartly, not having recovered her temper even after many days. I shall make every one love me before I go away. Mamma told me to, and I shall. I know how. And Button smiled with a wise little nod that was pretty to see, as she proudly cuddled her first conquest. We shall see. And Miss Henny ponderously departed, wondering what odd fancy the little thing would take into her head next. It was soon evident, for when she came down from her long nap, later in the afternoon, Miss Henny found Rosamond reading aloud to her sister in the great dim parlor. They made a curious contrast, the pale, white-haired, feeble old lady, with her prim dress, high cap, knitting, and shaded eyes, and the child, rosy and round, quaint and sweet, a pretty little ornament for the old-fashioned room, as she sat among the teapoys and samplers, ancient china and furniture, with the portraits of great-grandfathers and grandmothers simpering and staring at her, as if pleased and surprised to see such a charming little descendant among them. "Bless the baby! What is she at now?" asked Miss Henny, feeling more amiable after her sleep. "I'm reading to Cousin Penny 'cause no one else does, and her poor eyes hurt her, and she likes stories, and so do I," answered Button, with one chubby finger on the place in her book, and eyes full of pride at the grown-up employment she had found for herself. "So kind of the little dear! She found me alone and wanted to amuse me, so I proposed a story to suit us both, and she does very well with a little help now and then. I haven't read Simple Susan for years, and really enjoy it. Maria Edgeworth was always a favorite of mine, and I still think her far superior to any modern writer for the young," said Miss Penny, looking quite animated and happy in the new entertainment provided for her. "Go on, child, let me hear how well you can read." And Miss Henny settled herself in the sofa corner with her embroidery. So Button started bravely on, and tried so hard that she was soon out of breath. As she paused, she said with a gasp, "Isn't Susan a dear girl? She gives all the best things to other people, and is kind to the old harper. She didn't send him away, as you did the music man today, and tell him to be still. Organs are a nuisance, and I never allow them here. Go on, and don't criticize your elders, Rosamond. Mamma and I always talk over stories, and pick out the morals of them. She likes it." With which remark, made sweetly not pertly, Button went on to the end, with an occasional lift over a long word, and the old ladies were interested, in spite of themselves, in the simple tale read in that childish voice. "Thank you, dear, it is very nice, and we will have one every day. Now, what can I do for you?" asked Miss Penny, as the little girl pushed the curls off her forehead, with a sigh of mingled weariness and satisfaction. "Let me go in the back garden and peep through the knot-hole at the pretty roses. I do long to see if the moss ones are out, and the cherries ripe," said Rosie, clasping her hands imploringly. "It can do no harm, Henrietta. Yes, dear, run away and get some catnip for Tabby, and see if the balsams are up yet." That last suggestion won Miss Henny's consent, and Button was off at once, skipping like a young colt all over the garden, which now seemed delightful to her. At the back of the summer house was a narrow space between it and the fence where certain plump toads lived. Peeping in to watch them, Rosie had spied a large knot-hole in the old boards, and through it found she could get a fine view of several rose-bushes, a tree, and one window of the missionary man's house. She had longed for another peep since the flower-stand was gone, and climbing trees forbidden. Now with joy she slipped into the damp nook, regardless of the speckled gentleman who stared at her with dismay, and took a good look at the forbidden paradise beyond. Yes, the moss ones were in bloom, the cherries quite red, and at the window was the gray head of Mr. Dover, as he sat reading in his queer yellow dressing-gown. Button yearned to get in, and leaned so hard against the hateful fence that the rotten board cracked, a long bit fell out, and she nearly went after it, as it dropped upon the green bank below. Now the full splendor of the roses burst upon her, and a delightful gooseberry bush stood close by with purplish berries temptingly bobbing within reach. This obliging bush hid the whole, but left fine openings to see through, so the child popped her curly head out, and gazed delightedly at the chickens, the flowers, the fruit, and the unconscious old gentleman not far away. "I'll have it for my secret, or maybe I'll tell Cousin Penny, and beg her to let me peep if I truly promise never to go in," thought Button, knowing well who her best friend was. At bedtime, when the dear old lady came to give the good-night kiss, which the others forgot, Rosie, as Miss Penny called her, made her request, and it was granted, for Miss Penny had a feeling that the little peacemaker would sooner or later heal the breach with her pretty magic, and so she was very ready to lend a hand in a quiet way. Next day at playtime, Button was hurrying down her last bit of gingerbread, which she was obliged to eat properly in the dining-room, instead of enjoying out of doors, when she heard a sudden flurry in the garden, and running to the window saw Roxy the maid chasing a chicken to and fro, while Miss Henny stood flapping her skirts on the steps, and crying, "Shoo!" till she was red in the face. "It's the white banty, and it must have come in my hole! Oh dear, I hope they won't catch it!" Cousin Henny said she'd wring the neck of the first one that flied over the wall. Away went Rosie, to join in the hunt, for Miss Henny was too fat to run, and Roxy found the lively fowl too much for her. It was a long and hard chase. Feathers flew, the maid lost her breath, Rosie tumbled down, and Miss Henny screamed and scolded till she was forced to sit down and watch in silence. At last poor, hunted Banty ran into the arbor, for its clipped wings would not lift it over the wall. Button rushed after it, and dismal squalls plainly proclaimed that the naughty chicken was caught. Miss Henny waddled down the path, declaring that she would wring its neck, and Roxy went puffing after her, glad to rest. But the old summer house was empty. No little girl, no ruffled bantam, appeared. Both had vanished like magic, and mistress and maid stared at each other in amazement, till they saw that the long-disused window was open, and a gleam of light came in from the narrow opening behind. "My patience! If that child hasn't crept out there, and bolted through that hole in the fence! Did you ever miss?" exclaimed Roxy, trying not to look pleased at being spared the distasteful task of killing the poor chicken. "Naughty girl!" began Miss Henny, when the sound of voices made both listen. "Slip in there, and see what is going on," said the mistress, well knowing that her stout person never could be squeezed into the small space between house and fence. Roxy, being thin, easily obeyed, and in a whisper telephoned what went on beyond the hole, causing Miss Henny much vexation, surprise, and at last real pleasure, as the child performed her little part in the mission she had undertaken. "Oh, please, it's all my fault! I kept the hole open, Mr. Thomas, and so Banty flied in. But it isn't hurt a bit, and I brought it home all safe, 'cause I know you love your chickies, and Tabby ate lots of 'em," said the childish voice in its most conciliatory tone. "Why didn't you fling it over the wall, as I did the cat?" asked Mr. Dover, smiling, as he shut up the truant fowl, and turned to look at the rosy, breathless child, whose pink frock bore the marks of many a tumble on grass and gravel. "It would hurt Banty's feelings, and yours too, and not be polite. So I came myself, to make some apologies, and say it was my fault. But please, could I keep the hole to peep through, if I always put up a board when I go away? It is so dull in there, and so sweet in here. Don't you think a little gate would be nicer, one just big enough for you, with a hook to fasten it? We'll call it a buttonhole," laughed Mr. Dover. "Then you could peep, or perhaps the ladies will think better of it, and show that they pardon my ill treatment of Tabby by letting you come in and pick some cherries and roses now and then." This charming proposal caused the little girl to clasp her hands and cry aloud. "That would be perfectly splendid! I know Cousin Penny would like it, and let me. P.R.A.P.S. she'd come herself, she's so thin, she could, and she loves your mother and wants to see her. Only Cousin Henny won't let us be nice and friendly. Suppose you send her some cherries. She loves good things to eat, and maybe she will say yes if you send lots." Mr. Dover laughed at this artless proposal, and Miss Henny smiled at the prospect of a gift of the luscious black heart cherries she had been longing for. Roxy wisely repeated only the agreeable parts of the conversation, so nothing ruffled the lady's temper. Now, whether Mr. Dover's sharp eye caught a glimpse of the face among the gooseberry bushes, and suspected eavesdroppers, or whether the child's earnest desire to make peace touched him, who shall say? Certain it is that his eyes twinkled like a boy's, as he said rather loudly, in his most affable tone, "I shall be most happy to send Miss Henrietta a basket of fruit. She used to be a charming young woman. It's a pity she shuts herself up so much, but that sad little romance of hers has darkened her life, I suppose. Ah, well, I can sympathize with her." Rosie stared at the sudden change in his manner, and was rather bewildered by his grown-up way of talking to her. But being intent on securing something nice to carry home, she stuck to the cherries, which she did understand, and pointing to the piazza said with a businesslike air, "There's a basket, so we might pick him right away." I love to go up in trees and throw 'em down, and I know Cousin Henny will like cherries ever so much, and not scold a bit when I take some to her." "Then come on!" cried Mr. Thomas, relapsing into the hearty manner she liked so much, and away he went, quite briskly, down the path, with his yellow skirts waving in the wind, and Button skipping after him in great glee. "They actually are picking cherries, miss, up in the tree like a couple of robins chirpin' and Logan as gay as can be," reported Roxy from her peephole. "Rip off the rest of that board, then I can see," whispered Miss Henny, quivering with interest now, for she had heard Mr. Dover's words, and her wrath was appeased by that flattering allusion to herself. Off came the rest of the board, and from the window, half hidden in woodbine, she could now see over the bushes into the next garden. The peephole commanded the tree, and she watched with eager eyes the filling of the basket to be sent her, planning the while a charming note of thanks. "Do look, miss, they are resting now, and she's on his knee. Ain't it a pretty picter?" whispered Roxy, unmindful of the earwigs, ants, and daddy long-legs promenading over her as she crouched in her moldy corner, intent on the view beyond. "Very pretty! He lost several children in India, and I suppose Rosie reminds him of them. Ah, poor man! I can sympathize with him, for I too have loved and lost," sighed Miss Henny, pensively surveying the group on the rustic seat. They were playing cherry bob, and the child's laughter made pleasant music in the usually quiet place, while the man's face lost its sad, stern look, and was both gay and tender, as he held the little creature close, and popped the ripe fruit into the red, laughing mouth. As the last sweet morsel disappeared, Rosie said, with a long breath of perfect content, "It's almost as good as having Papa to play with. I do hope the cousins will let me come again. If they don't, I think my heart will break, 'cause I get so homesick over there, and have so many trials, and no one but Cousin Penny ever cuddles me. Bless her heart! We'll send her some flowers for that. You tell her that Mrs. Dover is poorly, and would like very much to see her, and so would Mr. Thomas, who enjoys her little niece immensely. Can you remember that?" "Every word. She is very nice to me, and I love her, and I guess she will be glad to come. She likes moss roses, and so do I," added the unblushing little beggar, as Mr. Dover took out his knife and began to make the bouquet which was to be Miss Penny's bribe. He could not bear to give up his little playmate, and was quite ready to try again, with this persistent and charming ally to help him heal the breach. "Shall you send anything to Sis? You needn't mind about it, 'cause she can't keep me at home, but it might please her, and make her stop rapping my head with her thimble when I ask questions, and slapping my fingers when I touch any of her pretty things," suggested Button, as the flowers were added to the fruit, making a fine display. "I never send presents to young ladies," said Mr. Thomas shortly, adding, with both hands out, and his most inviting smile, "but I always kiss nice little girls if they will allow me?" Button threw both arms about his neck and gave him a shower of grateful kisses, which were sweeter to the lonely old man than all the cherries that ever grew, or the finest flowers in his garden. Then Miss Rosamond proudly marched home, finding no trace of the watchers, for both had fled while the cuddling went on. Roxy was soberly setting the dinner table, and Miss Henny in the parlor breathing hard behind a newspaper. Miss Penny and Cicely were spending the day out, so the roses had to wait, but the basket was most graciously received, also the carefully delivered message, and the child's heart was rejoiced by free permission to go and see our kind neighbor now and then, if sister does not object. Rosie was in great spirits, and prattled away as they sat at dinner, emboldened by the lady's unusual amiability to ask all sorts of questions, some of which proved rather embarrassing to Miss Henny, and very amusing to Roxy, listening in the china closet. "I wish I had spepsia," was the abrupt remark of the small person as her plate of drumsticks was removed and the pudding appeared, accompanied by the cherries. "Why, dear?" asked Miss Henny, busily arranging the small dish of delicate tidbits, which left little but the skeleton of the roast fowl for the kitchen. "Then I could have the nicest bits of chicken, and heaps of sauce on my pudding, and the butteriest slices of toast, and all the cream for my tea, as you do. It isn't a very bad pain, is it?" asked Rosie, in such perfect good faith that Miss Henny's sudden flush and Roxy's hasty dive into the closet never suggested to her that this innocent speech was bringing the old lady's besetting sin to light in the most open manner. "Yes, child, it is very bad, and you may thank your stars that I tried to keep you from it by feeding you on plain food. At my age, and suffering as I do, the best of everything is needed to keep up my strength," said Miss Henny tartly. But the largest plate of pudding, with heaps of sauce, went to the child this day, and when the fruit was served, an unusually small portion was put away for the invalid, who was obliged to sustain nature with frequent lunches through the day and evening. "I'm surprised that you suffer much, Cousin Henny. How brave you must be, not to cry about it, and go round in horrid pain, as you do, and dress so nicely, and see people, and work broidering, and make calls. I hope I shall be brave if I ever do have spepsia, but I guess I shan't, you take such care to give me small pieces every time." With which cheerful remark Rosie closed that part of the conversation and returned to the delights of her new friend's garden. But from that day, among other changes which began about this time, the child's cup and plate were well filled, and the dread of adding to her own suffering seemed to curb the dyspeptic's voracious appetite. A child was among them talking notes, and every one involuntarily dreaded those clear eyes and that frank tongue, so innocently observing and criticizing all that went on. Cicely had already been reminded of a neglected duty by Rosie's reading to Miss Penny, and tried to be more faithful in that, as in other services which she owed the old lady. So the little missionary was evidently getting on, though quite unconscious of her work at home, so absorbed was she in her foreign mission, for, like many another missionary, the savage over the way was more interesting than the selfish, slothful, or neglected souls at home. Miss Penny was charmed with her flowers and the friendly message sent her, and to Rosie's great delight went next day, in best bonnet and gown, to make a call upon the old lady, who was poorly, for that appeal could not be resisted. Rosie also, in honor of the great occasion, wore her best hat, and a white frock so stiff that she looked like a little opera dancer as the long black legs skipped along the street, for it was far too grand a visit to be paid through a hole in the wall. In the basket were certain delicacies for the old lady, and a card had been prepared, with the names of Miss Carey and Miss Rosamond Carey beautifully written on it by Cis, who was dying to go, but dared not after Rosie had told her Mr. Dover's remark about young ladies. As the procession of two paused at the door, both the young and the old heart fluttered a little, for this was the first decided step toward reconciliation, and any check might spoil it all. The maid stared, but civilly led these unexpected guests in and departed with the card. Miss Penny settled herself in a large chair and looked about with pensive interest at the familiar room. But Rosie made a beeline for the great tiger skin, and regardless of her clean frock lay down on it to examine the head, which glared at her with yellow eyes, showing all its sharp teeth in the most delightfully natural manner. Mr. Dover came in with a formal bow, but Miss Penny put out both hands, and said in her sweet old voice, "Let us be friends again for the sake of your mother." That settled the matter at once, and Mr. Thomas was so eager to do his part that he not only shook the hands heartily, but kept them in his as he said like an honest man, "My dear neighbor, I beg your pardon. I was wrong, but I'm not too proud to own it, and say I'm glad to let bygones be bygones for the sake of all. Now come and see my mother, she is longing for you." What went on in the next room Rosie never knew or cared, for Mr. Thomas soon returned, and amused her so well, showing his treasures, that she forgot where she was till the maid came to say tea was ready. "Are we going to stay?" cried the little girl, beaming from under a Fiji crown of feathers, which produced as comical an effect upon her curly head as did the collar of shark's teeth round her plump neck or the great Japanese war fan in her hand. "Yes, we have tea at 5, come and turn it out. I've ordered the little cups especially for you," said her host, as he changed the small Amazon to a pretty child again and led her away to preside at the table, where the quaint china and silver, and the dainty cake and bread and butter proved much more attractive than the little old lady in a big cap who patted her head and smiled at her. Never had Rosie enjoyed such a delicious meal, for the rapture of pouring real tea out of a pot shaped like a silver melon, into cups as thin as eggshells, and putting in sugar with tongs like claws, not to mention much thick cream, also spicy, plummy cakes that melted in one's mouth, was too great for words. The little maid was so absorbed in her new duties that she never minded what the elders talked about, till the plates were empty, the pot ran dry, and no one could be prevailed on to have any more tea. Then she leaned back in her chair and remarked with an air of calm satisfaction, as she looked from one to the other, and smiled that engaging smile of hers, "Isn't being friends a great deal nicer than fighting and throwing cats over walls and calling bad names?" It was impossible not to laugh, and that cheerful sound seemed to tune every one to the sweetest harmony, while the little peacemaker was passed round as if a last course of kisses was absolutely necessary. Then the party broke up, and Mr. Dover escorted his guests to their own gate, to the great amazement of the neighbors and the very visible pride of Miss Button-Rose, who went up the walk with her head as high as if the wreath of daisies on her little hat had been a conqueror's crown. Now that the first step had been taken, all would have gone smoothly if Cicely, offended because Mr. Thomas took no notice of her, had not put it into Miss Henny's head that as the original quarrel began between her and their neighbor, it would not be dignified to give until Mr. Dover had come and begged pardon of her as well as of Miss Penny. This suited the foolish old lady, who never could forget certain plain words spoken in the heat of battle, though the kindly ones lately heard had much softened her heart toward the offender. "No, I shall not forget my dignity nor humble myself by going over there to apologize as Penelope has. She can do as she likes, and now that he has asked to be forgiven, there is perhaps no harm in her seeing the old lady. But with me it is different. I was insulted, and till Thomas Dover comes here and solemnly asks my pardon I will not cross his threshold, no matter what bribes he sends," said Miss Henny, with an air of heroic firmness. But it did cost her a pang when her sister went every now and then to take tea with the old lady and came home full of pleasant news, while Rosie prattled of the fine things she saw, the nice things she had to eat, and never failed to bring some gift to share, or to display to the exiles from paradise. They ate the bribes, however, as they called the fruit, admired the pretty trinkets and toys, and longed to share in the mild festivities of the pleasant house over the way, but stood firm in spite of all Rosie's wiles, till something unexpected happened to touch their hearts, conquer their foolish pride, and crown the little peacemaker's efforts with success. One August afternoon Cicely was discontentedly looking over her small store of ornaments, as she made ready for a party. She loved gaiety, and went about a great deal, leaving many duties undone, or asking the little girl to attend to them for her, neglecting, however, to show any gratitude for these small services so cheerfully done. As she sat tossing over her boxes, Button-Rose came in looking tired and listless, for it was a hot day, and she had been out twice to do errands for Cicely, besides trotting busily up and down to wait on the old ladies while the young one put fresh ribbons on her dress and curled her hair for the evening. "Could I lie on your sofa, please, sis? My head aches, and my legs are so tired," said little Button, when her tap had been answered by a sharp, "What do you want, child?" "No, I'm going to lie there myself and have a nap as soon as I'm done here. It's cooler than the bed, and I must be fresh for tonight," said Cicely, too intent on her own affairs to see how used up Rosie looked. "Then could I look at your pretty things if I don't touch 'em?" asked the child, longing to peep into the interesting boxes scattered on the table. "No, you can't. I'm busy, and don't want you asking questions and meddling. Go away and let me alone." Cicely spoke crossly, and waved her hand with a warning gesture, thereby upsetting the tray which held the beads of the necklace she had decided to wear for want of something better. "There, now see what you've done! Pick up every one, and be quick, for I'm in a hurry." "But I didn't touch 'em," began poor Button, as she crept about hunting for the black and white beads that looked like very ugly marbles. "Don't talk, pick them up and then scamper, you are always in mischief," scolded Cis, vexed with herself, and the heat, and the accident, and the whole world just then. Rosie said no more, but several great tears dropped on the carpet as she groped in corners, under the bed, and behind the chairs for the runaways, and when the last was found she put it in her tyrant's hand, saying, with a wistful look, "I'm very sorry I troubled you. Seems to me if I had a little cousin, I'd love to have her play with my things, and I wouldn't be cross to her." Now I'll go and try to amuse myself with Bella. She is always good to me. Run along then. Thank goodness that doll came when it did, for I'm tired of amusing small girls as well as old ladies," said Sis, busy with her beads, yet sorry she had been so petulant with patient little Button, who seldom reproached her, being a cheery child, and blessed with a sweet temper. Rosie felt too languid to play, so when she had told Bella, the London doll, her trials, and comforted herself with some kisses on the waxen cheeks, she roamed away to the summer house, which was cool and quiet, longing for someone to caress her, for the little heart was homesick and the little head ached badly. The buttonhole had been made, the alley swept out, to the great dismay of the spiders, earwigs, and toads, who had fled to quieter quarters, and Rosie had leave to go and come when she liked if Mr. Dover did not object. He never did, and it was her greatest delight to walk in the pretty garden at her own sweet will, always with the hope of meeting its kindly owner, for now they were firm friends. She had been too busy for a run there that day, and now, as she peeped in, it looked so shady and inviting, and it seemed so natural to turn to her dear, missionary man, for entertainment, that she went straight up to his study window and peeped in. He too seemed out of sorts that hot afternoon, for he sat leaning his head on both hands at the desk strewn with piles of old letters. Button-Rose's tender heart yearned over him at once, and stepping quietly in at the long open window she went to him, saying in her tenderest tone, "Does your head ache, sir? Let me soft it as I do Papa's. He says that always makes it more better. Please let me? I'd love to dearly." "Ah, my darling, I wish you could. But the pain is in my heart, and nothing will ever cure it," sighed Mr. Thomas, as he drew her close and put his wrinkled yellow cheek to her soft one, which looked more like a damask rose than usual. "You have trials too, I suppose. Mine trouble me today, so I came over to see you. Shall I go away?" asked Rosie with a sigh and the wistful look again. "No, stay, and we will comfort each other. Tell me your troubles, Button, and perhaps I can help them," the kind old gentleman said as he took her on his knee and stroked the curly head with a paternal touch. So Rosie told her latest grief, and never saw the smile that crept about the lips that asked in a tone of deep interest, "Well, what do you mean to do to that unkind Cicely? For a minute I wanted to slap her back when she tried to spat my hands. Then I remembered that Mama said a kiss for a blow was a good thing, so I picked up the beads and planned to do it, but Sis looked so cross I couldn't. If I had a pretty necklace I'd go and give it to her, and then maybe she'd love me better. My dear little missionary, you shall have beads to win the heart of your heathen, if that is all you need. See here, take anything you like, and give it with the kiss." As he spoke, Mr. Dover pulled open a drawer in the desk and displayed a delightful collection of pretty, quaint, and curious trinkets picked up in foreign lands, and kept for keepsakes, since no little daughters of his own lived to wear them. "How perfectly gorgeous!" cried Rosie, who often fell into baby talk when excited, and plunging in her hands, she reveled for some minutes in sandalwood cases, carved ivory fans, silver bangles, barbaric brooches, and necklaces of coral, shells, amber, and golden coins, that jingled musically. "What shall I take for her?" cried the little maid, bewildered by such a mine of wealth. "You pick out one, Mr. Thomas, that will please her so much, 'cause you never send her anything, and she don't like it," said Rosie, fearing that her own taste was not to be trusted, as she liked the shells and shark's teeth ornaments best. "No, I'll give you one, and you shall do as you like about giving it to her. This, now, is really valuable and pretty, and any young lady would like to wear it. It makes me think of you, my Button, for it is like sunshine, and the word cut on the little heart means peace." Mr. Dover held up a string of amber beads with its carved amulet, and swung it to and fro where the light shone through it till each bead looked like a drop of golden wine. "Yes, that is lovely, and it smells nice, too. She will be so prized and pleased. I'll go and take it to her right away," cried Rosie, forgetting to ask anything for herself, in her delight at this fine gift for Sis. But as she lifted her head after he had fastened the clasp about her neck, something in his face recalled the look it wore when she first came in, and putting both hands upon his shoulders, she said in her sweet little way, "You've made my troubles go away, can I make yours? You are so kind to me, I'd love to help you if I could. You do, my child, more than you know, for when I get you in my arms it seems as if one of my poor babies had come back to me, and for a minute I forget the 3 little graves far away in India. 3! Cried Button, like a sad, soft echo, and she clung to the poor man as if trying to fill the empty arms with the love and pity that overflowed the childish soul in her small body. This was the comfort Mr. Thomas wanted, and for a few moments he just cradled her on his hungry heart, crooning a Hindustani lullaby, while a few slow tears came dropping down upon the yellow head, so like those hidden for years under the Indian flowers. Presently he seemed to come back from the happy past to which the old letters had carried him. He wiped his eyes, and Rosie's also, with a big purple silk handkerchief, and pressing some very grateful kisses on the hot cheeks, said cheerfully again, God bless you, child, that's done me good. But don't let it sadden you, dear, forget all about it, and tell no one what a sentimental old fool I am. I never truly will. Only when you feel sorry about the poor little babies, let me come and give you cuddlings. They always make people feel more better, and I love them, and don't get any now my dear people are away. So the two made a tender little plan to comfort each other when hearts were heavy with longings for the absent, and parted at the small gate, both much cheered, and faster friends than ever. Rosie hastened in with her peace-offering, forgetful now of headache or loneliness, as she sat patiently in the wide entry window seat listening till some sound in Cicely's room should show that she was awake. Before that happened, however, poor Button fell asleep herself, lulled by the quiet of the house, for every one was napping, and dreamed that Mr. Dover stood waving a rainbow over his head, while several Indian gods and 3 little girls were dancing round him, hand in hand, to the tune of Ring Around a Rosie. A loud yawn roused her, and there was Cis peeping out of her door to see what time it was by the old-fashioned clock on the landing. Up scrambled the child, feeling dizzy and heavy-eyed, but so eager to give pleasure that she lost no time in saying, as she swung the necklace in the sunshine, See! This is for you, if you like it more better than the thunder and lightning marbles, as Cousin Penny calls the one you were going to wear. How lovely! Where did you get it, child? Cried Cis, wide awake at once, as she ran to the glass to try the effect of the new ornament on her white neck. My dear Mr. Thomas gave it to me, but he said I could give it away if I liked, and I want you to have it, 'cause it's ever so much prettier than any you've got. That's very kind of you, chicken, but why not keep it yourself? You like nice things as well as I do, said Cicely, much impressed by the value of the gift, for it was real amber, and the clasp of gold. Well, I've talked with Mr. Thomas about missionarying a great deal, and he told me how he made the savings good by giving them beads, and things to eat, and being patient and kind to them. So I thought I'd be a missionary, and call this house Africa, and try to make the people here behave more better, answered Rosie, with such engaging earnestness, as well as frankness, that Cis laughed, and exclaimed, You impertinent monkey, to call us heathen and try to convert us! How do you expect to do it? Oh, I'm getting on pretty well, only you don't convert as quick as some of the savings did. I'll tell you about it. And Button went on eagerly. Cousin Penny is the good old one, but rather fussy and slow, so I'm kind and patient, and now she loves me and lets me do things I like. She is my best one. Cousin Henny is my canny belle, 'cause she eats so much, and I please her by bringing nice things and getting her cushions ready. You are my baddest one, who is cross to me, and fights, and raps my head, and slaps my hands, so I thought some beads would be nice for you, and I bring these beauties. Mr. Thomas gave them to me when I told him my trials. Cicely looked angry, amused, and ashamed, as she listened to the funny yet rather pathetic little play with which the lonely child had tried to cheer herself, and win the hearts of those about her. She had the grace to blush, and offer back the necklace, saying in a self-reproachful tone, Keep your beads, little missionary, I'll be converted without them, and try to be kinder to you. I am a selfish wretch, but you shall be my little sister, and not have to go to strangers for comfort in your trials any more. Come, kiss me, dear, and we'll begin now. Rosie was in her arms at once, and clung there, saying with a face all smiles, That's what I wanted. I thought I'd make a good savage of you if I tried very hard. Please be kind to me just till Mama comes back, and I'll be the best little sister that ever was." "Why didn't you tell me all about it before?" asked Cicely, smoothing the tired head on her shoulder with a new gentleness, for this last innocent confession had touched her heart as well as her conscience. "You never seemed to care about my plays, and always said, 'Don't chatter, child, run away and take care of yourself,' so I did. But it was pretty dull, with only Tabby to tell secrets to and Bella to kiss. Mr. Thomas said people over here didn't like children very well, and I found they didn't. He does, dearly, so I went to him. But I like you now, you are so soft and kind to me. How hot your cheeks are! Come and let me cool them, and brush your hair for tea," said Cis, as she touched the child's feverish skin, and saw how heavy her eyes were. "I'm all burning up, and my head is so funny. I don't want any tea. I want to lie on your sofa and go to sleep again." "Can I?" asked Rosie, with a dizzy look about the room, and a shiver at the idea of eating. "Yes, dear, I'll put on your little wrapper, and make you all comfortable, and bring you some ice water, for your lips are very dry." As she spoke, Cicely bustled about the room, and soon had Rosie nicely settled with her best cologne bottle and a fan. Then she hastened down to report that something was wrong, with a fear in her own heart that if any harm did come to the child it would be her fault. Some days before, Cicely had sent Buttonrose with a note to a friend's house where she knew some of the younger children were ill. Since then she had heard that it was scarlet fever, but though Rosie had waited some time for an answer to the note, and seen one of the invalids, Cis had never mentioned the fact, being ashamed to confess her carelessness, hoping no harm was done. Now she felt that it had come, and went to tell gentle Cousin Penny with tears of vain regret. Great was the lamentation when the doctor, who was sent for in hot haste, pronounced it scarlet fever, and deep was the self-reproach of the two older women for their blindness in not before remarking the languid air and want of appetite in the child. But Cicely was full of remorse, for every quick word, every rap of the hateful thimble, every service accepted without thanks, weighed heavily on her conscience now, as such things have an inconvenient way of doing when it is too late to undo them. Every one was devoted to the child. Even lazy Miss Henny gave up her naps to sit by her at all hours. Miss Penny hovered over the little bed like a grandmother, and Cicely refused to think of pleasure till the danger was over. For soon Buttonrose was very ill, and the old house haunted by the dreadful fear that death would rob them of the little creature who grew so precious when the thought of losing her made their hearts stand still. How could they live without the sound of that sweet voice chirping about the house, the busy feet tripping up and down, the willing hands trying to help, the sunny face smiling at everyone, and going away into corners to hide the tears that sometimes came to dim its brightness? What would comfort the absent mother for such a loss as this, and how could they answer to the father for the carelessness that risked the child's life for a girl's errand? No one dared to think, and all prayed heartily for Rosie's life, as they watched and waited by the little bed where she lay so patiently, till the fever grew high and she began to babble about many things. Her childish trials were all told, her longings for Mamma, whose place no one could fill, her quaint little criticisms upon those about her, and her plans for making peace. These innocent revelations caused many tears, and wrought some changes in those who heard, for Miss Penny quite forgot her infirmities to live in the sick-room as the most experienced nurse and tenderest watcher. Miss Henny cooked her daintiest gruel, brewed her coolest drinks, and lost many pounds in weight by her indefatigable trotting up and down to minister to the invalid's least caprice. Cicely was kept away for fear of infection, but her penance was to wander about the great house, more silent than ever now, to answer the inquiries and listen to the sad forebodings of the neighbors, who came to offer help and sympathy, for all loved little Buttonrose, and grieved to think of any blight falling on the pretty blossom. To while away the long hours, Cicely fell to dusting the empty rooms, setting closets and drawers to rights, and keeping all fresh and clean, to the great relief of the old cousins, who felt that everything would go to destruction in their absence. She read and sewed now, having no heart for jaunting about, and as she made the long-neglected white pinafores for Rosie, she thought much of the little girl who might never live to wear them. Meantime the fever took its course, and came at last to the fateful day when a few hours would settle the question of life or death. The hot flush died out of the cheeks that had lost their soft roundness now, the lips were parched, the half-shut eyes looked like sick violets, and all the pretty curls were tangled on the pillow. Rosie no longer sung to Bella, talked of 3 dear little girls, and Mr. Thomas, tigers and bangles, sis and necklaces, hens and gates. She ceased to call for Mama, asked no more why her missionary man never came, and took no notice of the anxious old faces bending over her. She lay in a stupor, and the doctor held the little wasted hand, and tried to see the face of his watch with dim eyes as he counted the faint pulse, whispering solemnly, "We can only hope and wait now. Sleep alone can save her." As the sisters sat, one on either side the narrow bed that day, and Cicely walked restlessly up and down the long hall below, where both doors stood open to let in the cool evening air, as the sun went down, a quick but quiet step came up the steps, and Mr. Dover walked in without ringing. He had been away, and coming home an hour ago, heard the sad news. Losing not a moment, he hurried to ask about his little Button, and his face showed how great his love and fear were, as he said in a broken whisper, "Will she live? My mother never told me how serious it was, or I should have returned at once." "We hope so, sir, but—" and there Cicely's voice failed, as she hid her face and sobbed. "My dear girl, don't give way. Keep up your heart, hope, pray, will that the darling shall live, and that may do some good. We can't let her go. We won't let her go. Let me see her. I know much of fevers far worse than this, and might be able to suggest something," begged Mr. Dover, throwing down his hat, and waving an immense fan with such an air of resolution and cheery goodwill that tired Cis felt comforted at once, and led the way upstairs entirely forgetting the great feud, as he did. At the threshold of the door he paused, till the girl had whispered his name. Miss Penny, always a gentlewoman, rose at once and went to meet him, but Miss Henny did not even seem to see him, for just then, as if dimly feeling that her friend was near, Rosie stirred, and gave a long sigh. Silently the three stood and looked at the beloved little creature lying there in the mysterious shadow of death, and they so helpless to keep her if the hour for departure had come. "God help us!" sighed pious Miss Penny, folding her old hands, as if they did that often now. "Drifting away, I fear." And Miss Henny's plump face looked almost beautiful, with the tears on it, as she leaned nearer to listen to the faint breath at the child's lips. "No, we will keep her, please the Lord. If we can make her sleep quietly for the next few hours she is safe. Let me try. Fan slowly with this, Miss Henrietta, and you, dear lady, pray that the precious little life may be given us." As he spoke, Mr. Dover gave the great fan to Miss Henny, took the small cold hands in his, and sitting on the bedside held them close in his large warm ones, as if trying to pour life and strength into the frail body, as his eyes, fixed on the half-opened ones, seemed to call back the innocent soul hovering on the threshold of its prison, like the butterfly poised upon the chrysalis before it soars away. Miss Penny knelt down nearby, and laying her white head on the other pillow, again besought God to spare this treasure to the father and mother over the sea. How long they remained so none of them ever knew, silent and motionless but for the slow waving of the noiseless fan, which went to and fro like the wing of a great white bird, as if Miss Henny's stout arm could never tire. Miss Penny was so still she seemed to be asleep. Mr. Dover never stirred, but grew paler as the minutes passed, and Cicely, creeping now and then to look in and steal away, saw strange power in the black eyes that seemed to hold the fluttering spirit of the little child by the love and longing that made them both tender and commanding. A level ray of sunlight stole through the curtain at last, and turned the tangles of bright hair to pure gold. Miss Henny rose to shut it out, and as if her movement broke the spell, Rosie took a long full breath, turned on the pillow, and putting one hand under her cheek, seemed to fall asleep as naturally as she used to do when well. Miss Penny looked up, touched the child's forehead, and whispered, with a look of gratitude as bright as if the sunshine had touched her also, "It is moist. This is real sleep. Oh, my baby! Oh, my baby!" And the old head went down again with a stifled sob, for her experience I told her that the danger was passing by and Rosie would live. "The prayers of the righteous avail much," murmured Mr. Dover, turning to the other lady, who stood beside her sister looking down at the little figure now lying so restfully between them. "How can we thank you?" she whispered, offering her hand, with the smile which had once made her pretty, and still touched the old face with something better than beauty. Mr. Dover took the hand and answered, with an eloquent look at the child, "Let not the sun go down upon our wrath. Forgive me and be friends again, for her sake." "I will!" And the plump hands gave the thin ones a hearty shake as the great feud ended forever over the bed of the little peacemaker whose childish play had turned to happy earnest. Mountain-Laurel and Maiden-Hair. "Here's your breakfast, miss. I hope it's right. Your mother showed me how to fix it, and said I'd find a cup up here. Take that blue one. I have not much appetite, and can't eat if things are not nice and pretty. I like the flowers. I've been longing for some ever since I saw them last night." The first speaker was a red-haired, freckle-faced girl, in a brown calico dress and white apron, with a tray in her hands and an air of timid hospitality in her manner. The second a pale, pretty creature, in a white wrapper and blue net, sitting in a large chair, looking about her with the languid interest of an invalid in a new place. Her eyes brightened as they fell upon a glass of rosy laurel and delicate maidenhair fern that stood among the toast and eggs, strawberries and cream, on the tray. "Our laurel is jest and blow, and I'm real glad you come in time to see it. I'll bring you a lot, as soon's ever I get time to go for it." As she spoke, the plain girl replaced the ugly crockery cup and saucer with the pretty china ones pointed out to her, arranged the dishes, and waited to see if anything else was needed. "What is your name, please?" asked the pretty girl, refreshing herself with a draught of new milk. "Rebecca. Mother thought I'd better wait on you. The little girls are so noisy and apt to forget. Wouldn't you like a pillar to your back? You look so kind of feeble, seems as if you wanted to be propped up a mite." There was so much compassion and goodwill in the face and voice, that Emily accepted the offer, and let Rebecca arrange a cushion behind her. Then, while the one ate daintily, and the other stirred about an inner room, the talk went on, for two girls are seldom long silent when together. "I think the air is going to suit me, for I slept all night and never woke till Mamma had been up ever so long and got things all nicely settled," said Emily graciously, when the fresh strawberries had been enjoyed, and the bread and butter began to vanish. "I'm real glad you like it. Most folks do, if they don't mind it being plain and quiet up here. It's gayer down at the hotel, but the air ain't half so good, and delicate folks generally like our old place best," answered Becky, as she tossed over a mattress and shook out the sheet with a brisk, capable air pleasant to see. "I wanted to go to the hotel, but the doctor said it would be too noisy for me, so Mamma was glad to find rooms here. I didn't think a farmhouse could be so pleasant. That view is perfectly splendid," and Emily sat up to gaze delightedly out of the window, below which spread the wide intervale, through which the river ran with hayfields on either side, while along the green slopes of the hills lay farmhouses with garden plots, and big barns waiting for the harvest, and beyond, the rocky, wooded pastures dotted with cattle and musical with cowbells, brooks, and birds. A balmy wind kissed a little color into the pale cheeks, the listless eyes brightened as they looked, and the fretful lines vanished from lips that smiled involuntarily at the sweet welcome nature gave the city child come to rest and play and grow gay and rosy in her green lap. Becky watched her with interest, and was glad to see how soon the newcomer felt the charm of the place, for the girl loved her mountain home, and thought the old farmhouse the loveliest spot in the world. "When you get stronger I can show you lots of nice views round here. There's a woodsy place behind the house that's just lovely. Down by the laurel bushes is my favorite spot, and among the rocks is a cave where I keep things handy when I get a resting spell now and then, and want to be quiet. Can't get much at home, when there's boarders and 5 children round in vacation time." Becky laughed as she spoke, and there was a sweet motherly look in her plain face, as she glanced at the 3 little red heads bobbing about the dooryard below, where hens cackled, a pet lamb fed, and the old white dog lay blinking in the sun. "I like children, we have none at home, and Mamma makes such a baby of me I'm almost ashamed sometimes. I want her to have a good rest now, for she has taken care of me all winter and needs it. You shall be my nurse if I need one, but I hope to be so well soon that I can see to myself." It's so tiresome to be ill. And Emily sighed as she leaned back among her pillows, with a glance at the little glass which showed her a thin face and shorn head. It must be. I never was sick, but I have taken care of sick folks, and have a sight of sympathy for 'em. Mother says I make a pretty good nurse, being strong and quiet, answered Becky, plumping up pillows and folding towels with a gentle dispatch which was very grateful to the invalid, who had dreaded a noisy, awkward serving maid. Never ill. How nice that must be. I'm always having colds and headaches, and fusses of some kind. What do you do to keep well, Rebecca? Asked Emily, watching her with interest, as she came in to remove the tray. Nothing but work. I haven't time to be sick, and when I'm tuckered out, I go and rest over yonder. Then I'm all right, and buckle to again, as smart as ever. And every freckle in Becky's rosy face seemed to shine with cheerful strength and courage. I'm tuckered out doing nothing, said Emily, amused with the new expression, and eager to try a remedy which showed such fine results in this case. I shall visit your pet places and do a little work as soon as I am able, and see if it won't set me up. Now I can only dawdle, doze, and read a little. Will you please put those books here on the table? I shall want them by and by. Emily pointed to a pile of blue and gold volumes lying on a trunk, and Becky dusted her hands as she took them up with an air of reverence, for she read on the backs of the volumes names which made her eyes sparkle. Do you care for poetry? Asked Emily, surprised at the girl's look and manner. Guess I do. Don't get much except the pieces I cut out of papers, but I love 'em, and stick 'em in an old ledger, and keep it down in my cubby among the rocks. I do love that man's pieces. They seem to go right to the spot somehow. And Becky smiled at the name of Whittier as if the sweetest of our poets was a dear old friend of hers. I like Tennyson better. Do you know him? Asked Emily, with a superior air, for the idea of this farmer's daughter knowing anything about poetry amused her. Oh yes, I've got a number of his pieces in my book, and I'm fond of him. But this man makes things so kind of true and natural I feel at home with him. And this one I've longed to read, though I guess I can't understand much of it. His bumblebee was just lovely, with the grass and columbines and the yellow breeches of the bee. I'm never tired of that. And Becky's face woke up into something like beauty, as she glanced hungrily at the Emerson, while she dusted the delicate cover that hid the treasures she coveted. I don't care much for him, but Mama does. I like romantic poems, and ballads and songs, don't like descriptions of clouds and fields, and bees and farmers, said Emily, showing plainly that even Emerson's simplest poems were far above her comprehension as yet, because she loved sentiment more than nature. I do, because I know I'm better than love and the romantic stuff most poetry tells about. But I don't pretend to judge, I'm glad of anything I can get. Now if you don't want me I'll pick up my dishes and go to work. With that Becky went away, leaving Emily to rest and dream with her eyes on the landscape which was giving her better poetry than any her books held. She told her mother about the odd girl, and was sure she would be amusing if she did not forget her place and try to be friends. She is a good creature, my dear, her mother's mainstay, and works beyond her strength, I am sure. Be kind to the poor girl, and put a little pleasure into her life if you can, answered Mrs. Spencer, as she moved about, settling comforts and luxuries for her invalid. I shall have to talk to her, as there is no other person of my age in the house. How are the school-marms? Shall you get on with them, Mamma? It will be so lonely here for us both, if we don't make friends with someone. Most intelligent and amiable women all three, and we shall have pleasant times together, I am sure. You may safely cultivate Becky, Mrs. Taylor told me she was a remarkably bright girl, though she may not look it. Well, I'll see. But I do hate freckles and big red hands, and round shoulders. She can't help it, I suppose, but ugly things fret me. Remember that she has no time to be pretty, and be glad she is so neat and willing. Shall we read, dear? I'm ready now. Emily consented, and listened for an hour or two while the pleasant voice beside her conjured away all her vapors with some of Mrs. Ewing's charming tales. The grass is dry now, and I want to stroll on that green lawn before lunch. You rest, Mamma dear, and let me make discoveries all alone, proposed Emily, when the sun shone warmly, and the instinct of all young creatures for air and motion called her out. So, with her hat and wrap, and book and parasol, she set forth to explore the new land in which she found herself. Down the wide, creaking stairs and out upon the doorstone she went, pausing there for a moment to decide where first to go. The sound of someone singing in the rear of the house led her in that direction, and turning the corner she made her first pleasant discovery. A hill rose steeply behind the farmhouse, and leaning from the bank was an old apple tree, shading a spring that trickled out from the rocks and dropped into a mossy trough below. Up the tree had grown a wild grapevine, making a green canopy over the great log which served as a seat, and someone had planted maidenhair ferns about both seat and spring to flourish beautifully in the damp, shady spot. "Oh, how pretty! I'll go and sit there. It looks clean, and I can see what is going on in that big kitchen, and hear the singing. I suppose it's Becky's little sisters by the racket." Emily established herself on the lichen-covered log with her feet upon a stone, and sat enjoying the musical tinkle of the water, with her eyes on the delicate ferns stirring in the wind, and the lively jingle of the multiplication table chanted by childish voices in her ear. Presently 2 little girls with a great pan of beans came to do their work on the back doorstep. A third was seen washing dishes at a window, and Becky's brown-spotted gown flew about the kitchen as if a very energetic girl wore it. A woman's voice was heard giving directions, as the speaker was evidently picking chickens somewhere out of sight. A little of the talk reached Emily and both amused and annoyed her, for it proved that the country people were not as stupid as they looked. "Oh, well, we mustn't mind if she is notional and kind of wearing. She's been sick, and it will take time to get rid of her fretty ways. Just be pleasant, and take no notice, and that nice mother of hers will make it all right," said the woman's voice. "How anybody with every mortal thing to be happy with can be out of sorts passes me. She fussed about every pillar, chair, trunk, and mite of food last night, and kept that poor tired lady trotting till I was provoked. She's right pleasant this morning though, and as pretty as a picture in her ruffled gown and that blue thing on her head," answered Becky from the pantry, as she rattled out the pie board, little dreaming who sat hidden behind the great vine festoons that veiled the corner by the spring. "Well, she's got redder hair than we have, so she needn't be so grand and try to hide it with blue nets," added one little voice. "Yes, and it's ever so much shorter than ours, and curls all over her head like Daisy's wool. I should think such a big girl would feel real ashamed without no braids," said the other child, proudly surveying the tawny mane that hung over her shoulders, for like most red-haired people all the children were blessed with luxuriant crops of every shade from golden auburn to regular carrots. "I think it's lovely. Suppose it had to be cut off when she had the fever. Wish I could get rid of my mop, it's such a bother." And Becky was seen tying a clean towel over the great knot that made her head look very like a copper kettle. "Now fly round, dearie, and get them pies ready. I'll have these fowls on in a minute, and then go to my butter. You run off and see if you can't find some wild strawberries for the poor girl, soon's ever you are through with them beans, children. We must kind of pamper her up for a spell till her appetite comes back," said the mother. Here the chat ended, and soon the little girls were gone, leaving Becky alone rolling out pie crusts before the pantry window. As she worked her lips moved, and Emily, still peeping through the leaves, wondered what she was saying, for a low murmur rose and fell, emphasized now and then with a thump of the rolling pin. "I mean to go and find out. If I stand on that wash bench I can look in and see her work. I'll show them all that I'm not fussy, and can be right pleasant if I like." With this wise resolution Emily went down the little path, and after pausing to examine the churn set out to dry, and the row of pans shining on a neighboring shelf, made her way to the window, mounted the bench while Becky's back was turned, and pushing away the morning glory vines and scarlet beans that ran up on either side peeped in with such a smiling face that the crossest cook could not have frowned on her as an intruder. "May I see you work? I can't eat pies, but I like to watch people make them. Do you mind?" "Not a bit. I'd ask you to come in, but it's dreadful hot here, and not much room," answered Becky, crimping round the pastry before she poured in the custard. "I'm going to make a nice little pudding for you. Your mother said you liked 'em, or would you rather have whipped cream with a mite of jelly in it?" asked Becky, anxious to suit her new boarder. Whichever is easiest to make. I don't care what I eat. Do tell me what you were saying. It sounded like poetry, said Emily, leaning both elbows on the wide ledge with a pale pink morning glory kissing her cheek, and a savory odor reaching her nose. Oh, I was mumbling some verses. I often do when I work, it sort of helps me along, but it must sound dreadfully silly. And Becky blushed as if caught in some serious fault. I do it, and it's a great comfort when I lie awake. I should think you would want something to help you along, you work so hard. Do you like it, Becky? The familiar name, the kind tone, made the plain face brighten with pleasure as its owner said, while she carefully filled a pretty bowl with a golden mixture rich with fresh eggs and country milk. No, I don't, but I ought to. Mother isn't as strong as she used to be, and there's a sight to do, and the children to be brought up, and the mortgage to be paid off, so if I don't fly round, who will? We are doing real well now, for Mr. Walker manages the farm and gives us our share, so our living is all right. Then boarders in summer and my school in winter helps a deal, and every year the boys can do more, so I'd be a real sinner to complain if I do have to step lively all day. Becky smiled as she spoke, and straightened her bent shoulders as if settling her burden for another trudge along the path of duty. Do you keep school? Why, how old are you, Becky? Asked Emily, much impressed by this new discovery. I'm 18. I took the place of a teacher who got sick last fall, and I kept school all winter. Folks seem to like me, and I'm going to have the same place this year. I'm so glad, for I needn't go away and the pay is pretty good, as the school is large and the children do well. You can see the schoolhouse down the valley, that red brick one where the roads meet. And Becky pointed a flowery finger, with an air of pride that was pleasant to see. Emily glanced at the little red house where the sun shone hotly in summer, and all the winds of heaven must rage wildly in winter time, for it stood, as country schools usually do, in the barest, most uninviting spot for miles around. Isn't it awful down there in winter? She asked, with a shiver at the idea of spending days shut up in that forlorn place, with a crowd of rough country children. Pretty cold, but we have plenty of wood, and we are used to snow and gales up here. We often coast down, the whole lot of us, and that is great fun. We take our dinners and have games noon spells, and so we get on first rate. Some of my boys are big fellows, older than I am. They clear the roads and make the fire and look after us, and we are real happy together. Emily found it so impossible to imagine happiness under such circumstances that she changed the subject by asking in a tone which had unconsciously grown more respectful since this last revelation of Becky's abilities. If you do so well here, why don't you try for a larger school in a better place? Oh, I couldn't leave Mother yet. I hope to some day, when the girls are older, and the boys able to get on alone. But I can't go now, for there's a sight of things to do, and Mother is always laid up with rheumatism in cold weather. So much butter-making down cellar is bad for her, but she won't let me do that in summer, so I take care of her in winter. I can see to things night and morning, and through the day she's quiet, and sits piecing carpet rags and resting up for next spring. We made and wove all the carpets in the house, except the parlor one. Mrs. Taylor gave us that, and the curtains, and the easy chair. Mother takes a sight of comfort in that. Mrs. Taylor is the lady who first came to board here, and told us and others about it, said Emily. Yes, and she's the kindest lady in the world. I'll tell you all about her some day, it's real interesting. Now I must see to my pies, and get the vegetables on, answered Becky, glancing at the gay clock in the kitchen with an anxious look. Then I won't waste any more of your precious time. May I sit in that pretty place, or is it your private bower? Asked Emily, as she dismounted from the wash-bench. Yes, indeed you may. That's Mother's resting place when work is done. Father made the spring long ago, and I put the ferns there. She can't go rambling round, and she likes pretty things, so we fixed it up for her, and she takes comfort there nights. Becky bustled off to the oven with her pies, and Emily roamed away to the big barn to lie on the hay, enjoying the view down the valley, as she thought over what she had seen and heard, and very naturally contrasted her own luxurious and tenderly guarded life with this other girl's, so hard and dull and narrow. working all summer and teaching all winter in that dismal little schoolhouse, with no change but home cares and carpet weaving. It looked horrible to pleasure-loving Emily, who led the happy, carefree life of girls of her class, with pleasures of all sorts, and a future of still greater luxury, variety, and happiness opening brightly before her. It worried her to think of any one being contented with such a meager share of the good things of life, when she was unsatisfied in spite of the rich store showered upon her. She could not understand it, and fell asleep wishing every one could be comfortable. It was so annoying to see them grubbing in kitchens, teaching in bleak schoolhouses among snowdrifts, and wearing ugly calico gowns. A week or two of quiet, country fare and the bracing mountain air worked wonders for the invalid, and every one rejoiced to see the pale cheeks begin to grow round and rosy, the languid eyes to brighten, and the feeble girl who used to lie on her sofa half the day now go walking about with her alpenstock, eager to explore all the pretty nooks among the hills. Her mother blessed Mrs. Taylor for suggesting this wholesome place. The tired schoolmarms, as Emily called the 3 young women who were their fellow boarders, congratulated her as well as themselves on the daily improvement in strength and spirits all felt, and Becky exulted in the marvelous effects of her native air, aided by mother's good cookery and the cheerful society of the children, whom the good girl considered the most remarkable and lovable youngsters in the world. Emily felt like the queen of this little kingdom, and was regarded as such by every one, for with returning health she lost her fretful ways, and living with simple people, soon forgot her girlish airs and vanities, becoming very sweet and friendly with all about her. The children considered her a sort of good fairy who could grant wishes with magical skill, as various gifts plainly proved. The boys were her devoted servants, ready to run errands, hitch up, and take her to drive at any hour, or listen in mute delight when she sang to her guitar in the summer twilight. But to Becky she was a special godsend and comfort, for before the first month had gone they were good friends, and Emily had made a discovery which filled her head with brilliant plans for Becky's future, in spite of her mother's warnings, and the sensible girl's own reluctance to be dazzled by enthusiastic prophecies and dreams. It came about in this way. Some 3 weeks after the 2 girls met, Emily went one evening to their favorite trysting place, Becky's bower among the laurels. It was a pretty nook in the shadow of a great grey boulder near the head of the green valley which ran down to spread into the wide intervale below. A brook went babbling among the stones and grass and sweet ferns, while all the slope was rosy with laurel flowers in their times, as the sturdy bushes grew thickly on the hillside, down the valley, and among the woods that made a rich background for these pink and white bouquets arranged with nature's own careless grace. Emily liked this spot, and ever since she had been strong enough to reach it, loved to climb up and sit there with book and work, enjoying the lovely panorama before her. Floating mists often gave her a constant succession of pretty pictures, now a sunny glimpse of the distant lake, then the church spire peeping above the hill, or a flock of sheep feeding in the meadow, a gay procession of young pilgrims winding up the mountain, or a black cloud heavy with a coming storm, welcome because of the glorious rainbow and its shadow which would close the pageant. Unconsciously the girl grew to feel not only the beauty but the value of these quiet hours, to find a new peace, refreshment, and happiness, bubbling up in her heart as naturally as the brook gushed out among the mossy rocks, and went singing away through hayfields and gardens, and by dusty roads, till it met the river and rolled on to the sea. Something dimly stirred in her, and the healing spirit that haunts such spots did its sweet ministering till the innocent soul began to see that life was not perfect without labor as well as love, duty as well as happiness, and that true contentment came from within, not from without. On the evening we speak of, she went to wait for Becky, who would join her as soon as the after-supper chores were done. In the little cave which held a few books, a dipper, and a birch-bark basket for berries, Emily kept a sketching block and a box of pencils, and often amused herself by trying to catch some of the lovely scenes before her. These efforts usually ended in a humbler attempt, and a good study of an oak tree, a bit of rock, or a clump of ferns was the result. This evening the sunset was so beautiful she could not draw, and remembering that somewhere in Becky's scrapbook there was a fine description of such an hour by some poet, she pulled out the shabby old volume, and began to turn over the leaves. She had never cared to look at it but once, having read all the best of its contents in more attractive volumes, so Becky kept it tucked away in the farther corner of her rustic closet, and evidently thought it a safe place to conceal a certain little secret which Emily now discovered. As she turned the stiff pages filled with all sorts of verses, good, bad, and indifferent, a sheet of paper appeared on which was scribbled these lines in schoolgirl handwriting. Mountain-Laurel. She wrote it herself. I can't believe it, said Emily, as she put down the paper, looking rather startled, for she did believe it, and felt as if she had suddenly looked into a fellow creature's heart. I thought her just an ordinary girl, and here she is a poet, writing verses that make me want to cry. I don't suppose they are very good, but they seem to come right out of her heart, and touch me with the longing and the patience or the piety in them. Well, I am surprised. And Emily read the lines again, seeing the faults more plainly than before, but still feeling that the girl put herself into them, vainly trying to express what the wild flower was to her in the loneliness which comes to those who have a little spark of the divine fire burning in their souls. Shall I tell her I've found it out? I must! And see if I can't get her verses printed. Of course she has more tucked away somewhere. That is what she hums to herself when she's at work, and won't tell me about when I ask. Sly thing! To be so bashful and hide her gift. I'll tease her a bit and see what she says. Oh dear, I wish I could do it. Perhaps she'll be famous some day, and then I'll have the glory of discovering her. With that consolation, Emily turned over the pages of the ledger and found several more bits of verse, some very good for an untaught girl, others very faulty, but all having a certain strength of feeling and simplicity of language unusual in the effusions of young maidens at the sentimental age. Emily had a girlish admiration for talent of any kind, and being fond of poetry, was especially pleased to find that her humble friend possessed the power of writing it. Of course she exaggerated Becky's talent, and as she waited for her, felt sure that she had discovered a feminine Burns among the New Hampshire hills, for all the verses were about natural and homely objects, touched into beauty by sweet words or tender sentiment. She had time to build a splendid castle in the air and settle Becky in it with a crown of glory on her head, before the quiet figure in a faded sunbonnet came slowly up the slope with the glow of sunset on a tired but tranquil face. Sit here and have a good rest while I talk to you, said Emily, eager to act the somewhat dramatic scene she had planned. Becky sunk upon the red cushion prepared for her, and sat looking down at the animated speaker, as Emily, perched on a mossy stone before her, began the performance. Becky, did you ever hear of the Goodale children? They lived in the country and wrote poetry and grew to be famous. Oh yes, I've read their poems and like 'em very much. Do you know 'em? And Becky looked interested at once. No, but I once met a girl who was something like them, only she didn't have such an easy time as they did, with a father to help, and a nice sky farm, and good luck generally. I've tried to write verses myself, but I always get into a muddle, and give it up. This makes me interested in other girls who can do it, and I want to help my friend. I'm sure she has talent, and I'd so like to give her a lift in some way. Let me read you a piece of hers and see what you think of it. Do. And Beck threw off the sunbonnet, folded her hands round her knees, and composed herself to listen with such perfect unconsciousness of what was coming that Emily both laughed at the joke and blushed at the liberty she felt she was taking with the poor girl's carefully hidden secret. Becky was sure now that Emily was going to read something of her own after this artful introduction, and began to smile as the paper was produced and the first 4 lines read in a tone that was half timid, half triumphant. Then with a cry she seized and crumpled up the paper, exclaiming almost fiercely, "It's mine! Where did you get it? How darest you touch it?" Emily fell upon her knees with a face and voice so full of penitence, pleasure, sympathy, and satisfaction, that Becky's wrath was appeased before her friend's explanation ended with these soothing and delightful words. "That's all, dear, and I beg your pardon. But I'm sure you will be famous if you keep on, and I shall yet see a volume of poems by Rebecca Moore of Rocky Nook, New Hampshire." Becky hid her face as if shame, surprise, wonder, and joy filled her heart too full and made a few happy tears drop on the hands so worn with hard work, when they ached to be holding a pen and trying to record the fancies that sung in her brain as ceaselessly as the soft sough of the pines or the ripple of the brook murmured in her ear when she sat here alone. She could not express the vague longings that stirred in her soul. She could only feel and dimly strive to understand and utter them, with no thought of fame or fortune, for she was a humble creature, and never knew that the hardships of her life were pressing out the virtues of her nature as the tread of careless feet crushed the sweet perfume from wild herbs. Presently she looked up, deeply touched by Emily's words and caresses, and her blue eyes shone like stars as her face beamed with something finer than mere beauty, for the secrets of her innocent heart were known to this friend now, and it was very sweet to accept the first draught of confidence and praise. "I don't mind much, but I was scared for a minute. No one knows but Mother, and she laughs at me, though she don't care if it makes me happy. I'm glad you like my scribbling, but really I never think or hope of being anybody. I couldn't, you know. But it's real nice to have you say I might and to make believe for a while." "But why not, Becky? The good old girls did, and half the poets in the world were poor, ignorant people at first, you know. It only needs time and help, and the gift will grow, and people see it, and then the glory and the money will come," cried Emily, quite carried away by her own enthusiasm and goodwill. "Could I get any money by these things?" asked Becky, looking at the crumpled paper lying under a laurel bush. "Of course you could, dear. Let me have some of them, and I'll show you that I know good poetry when I see it. You will believe if some bank bills come with the paper the verses appear in, I hope?" Blind to any harm she might do by exciting vain hopes in her eagerness to cheer and help, Emily made this rash proposal in all good faith, meaning to pay for the verses herself if no editor was found to accept them. Becky looked half bewildered by this brilliant prospect, and took a long breath, as if some hand had lifted a heavy burden a little way from her weary back, for stronger than ambition for herself was love for her family, and the thought of help for them was sweeter than any dream of fame. "Yes, I would. Oh, if I only could, I'd be the happiest girl in the world. But I can't believe it, Emily. I heard Mrs. Taylor say that only the very best poetry paid, and mine is poor stuff, I know well enough. Of course it needs polishing and practice and all that, but I'm sure it is oceans better than half the sentimental twaddle we see in the papers, and I know that some of those pieces are paid for, because I have a friend who is in a newspaper office, and he told me so. Yours are quaint and simple and some very original. I'm sure that ballad of the old house is lovely, and I want to send it to Whittier. Mama knows him, it's the sort he likes, and he is so kind to everyone, he will criticize it, and be interested when she tells him about you. Do let me! I never could in the world! It would be so bold, Mother would think I was crazy. I love Mr. Whittier, but I wouldn't dare to show him my nonsense, though reading his beautiful poetry helps me ever so much." Becky looked and spoke as if her breath had been taken away by this audacious proposal, and yet a sudden delicious hope sprung up in her heart that there might, perhaps, be a spark of real virtue in the little fire which burned within her, warming and brightening her dull life. "Let us ask Mamma. She will tell us what is best to do first, for she knows all sorts of literary people, and won't say any more than you want her to. I'm bent on having my way, Becky, and the more modest you are, the surer I am that you are a genius. Real geniuses always are shy, so you just make up your mind to give me the best of your pieces, and let me prove that I'm right." It was impossible to resist such persuasive words, and Becky soon yielded to the little siren who was luring her out of her safe, small pool into the deeper water that looks so blue and smooth till the venturesome paper boats get into the swift eddies, or run aground upon the rocks and sandbars. The greatest secrecy was to be preserved, and no one but Mrs. Spencer was to know what a momentous enterprise was afoot. The girls sat absorbed in their brilliant plans till it was nearly dark, then groped their way home hand in hand, leaving another secret for the laurels to keep and dream over through their long sleep, for blossom time was past, and the rosy faces turning pale in the July sun. Neither of the girls forgot the talk they had that night in Emily's room, for she led her captive straight to her mother, and told her all their plans and aspirations without a moment's delay. Mrs. Spencer much regretted her daughter's well-meant enthusiasm, but fearing harm might be done, very wisely tried to calm the innocent excitement of both by the quiet matter-of-fact way in which she listened to the explanation Emily gave her, read the verses timidly offered by Becky, and then said kindly but firmly, "This is not poetry, my dear girls, though the lines run smoothly enough, and the sentiment is sweet. It would bring neither fame nor money, and Rebecca puts more real truth, beauty, and poetry into her dutiful daily life than in any lines she has written. We had such a lovely plan for Becky to come to town with me, and see the world, and write, and be famous. How can you spoil it all? My foolish little daughter, I must prevent you from spoiling this good girl's life by your rash projects. Becky will see that I am wise though you do not, and she will understand this verse from my favorite poet, and lay it to heart. I do. I will. Please go on." And Becky's troubled eyes grew clear and steadfast as she took the words home to herself, resolving to live up to them. "Oh, mother!" cried Emily, thinking her very cruel to nip their budding hopes in this way. "I know you won't believe it now, nor be able to see all that I mean perhaps, but time will teach you both to own that I am right, and to value the substance more than the shadow," continued Mrs. Spencer. "Many girls write verses and think they are poets. But it is only a passing mood, and fortunately for the world, and for them also, it soon dies out in some more genuine work or passion. Very few have the real gift, and those to whom it is given wait and work and slowly reach the height of their powers. Many delude themselves, and try to persuade the world that they can sing, but it is waste of time, and ends in disappointment, as the mass of sentimental rubbish we all see plainly proves. Write your little verses, my dear. When the spirit moves, it is a harmless pleasure, a real comfort, and a good lesson for you. But do not neglect higher duties or deceive yourself with false hopes and vain dreams. First live, then write, is a good motto for ambitious young people. A still better for us all is, do the duty that lies nearest, and the faithful performance of that, no matter how humble it is, will be the best help for whatever talent may lie hidden in us, ready to bloom when the time comes. Remember this, and do not let my enthusiastic girl's well-meant but unwise prophecies and plans unsettle you, and unfit you for the noble work you are doing." "Thank you, ma'am. I will remember. I know you are right, and I won't be upset by foolish notions. I never imagined before that I could be a poet, but it sounded so sort of splendid, I thought maybe it might happen to me, by and by, as it does to other folks. I won't lot on it, but settle right down and do my work cheerful." As she listened, Becky's face had grown pale and serious, even a little sad. But as she answered, her eyes shone, her lips were firm, and her plain face almost beautiful with the courage and confidence that sprung up within her. She saw the wisdom of her friend's advice, felt the kindness of showing her the mistake frankly, and was grateful for it, conscious in her own strong, loving heart that it was better to live and work for others than to dream and strive for herself alone. Mrs. Spencer was both surprised and touched by the girl's look, words, and manner, and her respect much increased by the courage and good temper with which she saw her lovely castle in the air vanish like smoke, leaving the hard reality looking harder than ever, after this little flight into the fairy regions of romance. She talked long with the girls, and gave them the counsel all eager young people need, yet are very slow to accept till experience teaches them its worth. As the friend of many successful literary people, Mrs. Spencer was constantly receiving the confidences of unfledged scribblers, each of whom was sure that he or she had something valuable to add to the world's literature. Her advice was always the same: work and wait. And only now and then was a young poet or author found enough in earnest to do both, and thereby prove to themselves and others that either they did possess power, or did not, and so settle the question forever. First live, then write, proved a quietus for many, and do the duty that lies nearest, satisfied the more sincere that they could be happy without fame. So, thanks to this wise and kindly woman, a large number of worthy youths and maidens ceased dreaming and fell to work, and the world was spared reams of feeble verse and third-rate romances. After that night Becky spent fewer spare hours in her nest, and more in reading with Emily, who lent her books and helped her to understand them, both much assisted by Mrs. Spencer, who marked passages, suggested authors, and explained whatever puzzled them. Very happy bits of time were these, and very precious to both, as Emily learned to see and appreciate the humbler, harder side of life, and Becky got delightful glimpses into the beautiful world of art, poetry, and truth, which gave her better food for heart and brain than sentimental musings or blind efforts to satisfy the hunger of her nature with verse writing. Their favorite places were in the big barn, on the front porch, or by the spring. This last was Emily's schoolroom, and she both taught and learned many useful lessons there. One day, as Becky came to rest a few minutes and shell peas, Emily put down her book to help, and as the pods flew, she said, nodding toward the delicate ferns that grew thickly all about the trough, the rock, and the grassy bank, "We have these in our greenhouse, but I never saw them growing wild before, and I don't find them anywhere up here. How did you get such beauties, and make them do so well?" "Oh, they grow in nooks on the mountain hidden under the taller ferns, and in sly corners. But they don't grow like these, and die soon unless transplanted and taken good care of. They always make me think of you, so graceful and delicate, and just fit to live with tea roses in a hothouse, and go to balls and beautiful ladies' bouquets," answered Becky, smiling at her new friend, always so dainty, and still so delicate in spite of the summer's rustication. "Thank you. I suppose I shall never be very strong or able to do much, so I am rather like a fern, and do live in a conservatory all winter, as I can't go out a great deal." "An idle thing, Becky!" And Emily sighed, for she was born frail, and even her tenderly guarded life could not give her the vigor of other girls. But the sigh changed to a smile as she added, "If I am like the fern, you are like your own laurel, strong, rosy, and able to grow anywhere. I want to carry a few roots home, and see if they won't grow in my garden. Then you will have me, and I you. I only hope your plant will do as well as mine does here." "It won't. Ever so many folks have taken roots away, but they never thrive in gardens as they do on the hills where they belong. So I tell 'em to leave the dear bushes alone, and come up here and enjoy 'em in their own place. You might keep a plant of it in your hothouse, and it would blow, I dare say, but it would never be half so lovely as my acres of them, and I guess it would only make you sad, seeing it's so far from home, and pale and pining," answered Becky, with her eyes on the green slopes where the mountain laurel braved the wintry snow, and came out fresh and early in the spring. "Then I'll let it alone till I come next summer. But don't you take any of the fern into the house in the cold weather? I should think it would grow in your sunny windows," said Emily, pleased by the fancy that it resembled herself. "I tried it, but it needs a damp place, and our cold nights kill it. No, it won't grow in our old house, but I cover it with leaves, and the little green sprouts come up as hardy as can be out here. The shade, the spring, the shelter of the rock, keep it alive, you see, so it's no use trying to move it." Both sat silent for a few minutes, as their hands moved briskly and they thought of their different lots. An inquisitive ray of sunshine peeped in at them, touching Becky's hair till it shone like red gold. The same ray dazzled Emily's eyes. She put up her hand to pull her hat brim lower, and touched the little curls on her forehead. This recalled her pet grievance, and made her say impatiently, as she pushed the thick short locks under her net, "My hair is such a plague! I don't know what I am to do when I go into society by and by. This crop is so unbecoming, and I can't match my hair anywhere, it is such a peculiar shade of golden auburn. It's a pretty color, and I think the curls much nicer than a boughten switch," said Becky, quite unconscious that her own luxuriant locks were of the true Titian red, and would be much admired by artistic eyes. "I don't. I shall send to Paris to match it, and then wear a braid round my head as you do sometimes. I suppose it will cost a fortune, but I won't have a strong-minded crop. A friend of mine got a lovely golden switch for $50. My patience! Do folks pay like that for false hair?" asked Becky, amazed. "Yes, indeed. White hair costs $100, I believe, if it is long. Why, you could get ever so much for yours if you ever wanted to sell it. I'll take part of it, for in a little while mine will be as dark, and I'd like to wear your hair, Becky. Don't believe Mother would let me. She is very proud of our red heads. If I ever do cut it, you shall have some. I may be hard up and glad to sell it perhaps. My sakes! I smell the cake burning. And off flew Becky to forget the chat in her work. Emily did not forget it, and hoped Becky would be tempted, for she really coveted one of the fine braids, but felt shy about asking the poor girl for even a part of her one beauty. So July and August passed pleasantly and profitably to both girls, and in September they were to part. No more was said about poetry, and Emily soon became so interested in the busy, practical life about her that her own high-flown dreams were quite forgotten, and she learned to enjoy the sweet prose of daily labor. One breezy afternoon, as she and her mother sat resting from a stroll on the wayside bank among the goldenrod and asters, they saw Becky coming up the long hill with a basket on her arm. She walked slowly, as if lost in thought, yet never missed pushing aside with a decided gesture of her foot every stone that lay in her way. There were many in that rocky path, but Becky left it smoother as she climbed, and paused now and then to send some especially sharp or large ones spinning into the grassy ditch beside the road. "Isn't she a curious girl, Mamma? So tired after her long walk to town, yet so anxious not to leave a stone in the way," said Emily, as they watched her slow approach. "A very interesting one to me, dear, because under that humble exterior lies a fine, strong character. It is like Becky to clear her way, even up a dusty hill where the first rain will wash out many more stones. Let us ask her why she does it." "I've observed the habit before, and always meant to ask," replied Mrs. Spencer. "Here we are. Come and rest a minute, Becky, and tell us if you mend roads as well as ever so many other things," called Emily, beckoning with a smile, as the girl looked up and saw them. "Oh, it's a trick of mine. I caught it of Father when I was a little thing, and do it without knowing it half the time," said Becky, sinking down upon a mossy rock, as if rest were welcome. "Why did he do it?" asked Emily, who knew that her friend loved to talk of her father. "Well, it's a family failing, I guess, for his father did the same, only he began with his farm and let the roads alone. The land used to be pretty much all rocks up here, you know, and farmers had to clear the ground if they wanted crops. It was a hard fight, and took a sight of time and patience to grub out roots and blast rocks and pick up stones that seemed to grow faster than anything else. But they kept on, and now see." As she spoke, Becky pointed proudly to the wide, smooth fields lying before them, newly shorn of grass or grain, waving with corn, or rich in garden crops ripening for winter stores. Here and there were rocky strips unreclaimed, as if to show what had been done, and massive stone walls surrounded pasture, field, and garden. "A good lesson in patience and perseverance, my dear, and does great honor to the men who made the wilderness blossom like the rose," said Mrs. Spencer. "Then you can't wonder that they loved it, and we want to keep it. I guess it would break Mother's heart to sell this place, and we are all working as hard as ever we can to pay off the mortgage. Then we'll be just the happiest family in New Hampshire," said Becky, fondly surveying the old farmhouse, the rocky hill, and the precious fields won from the forest. "You never need fear to lose it. We will see to that if you will let us," began Mrs. Spencer, who was both a rich and a generous woman. "Oh, thank you. But we won't need help, I guess, and if we should, Mrs. Taylor made us promise to come to her," cried Becky. "She found us just in our hardest time, and wanted to fix things then, but we are proud in our way, and Mother said she'd rather work it off if she could. Then what did that dear lady do but talk to the folks round here, and show 'em how a branch railroad down to Peaksville would increase the value of the land, and how good this valley would be for strawberries and asparagus and garden truck if we could only get it to market. Some of the rich men took up the plan, and we hope it will be done this fall. It will be the making of us, for our land is first rate for small crops, and the children can help at that, and with a depot close by it would be such easy work. That's what I call helping folks to help themselves. Won't it be grand?" Becky looked so enthusiastic that Emily could not remain uninterested, though market gardening did not sound very romantic. "I hope it will come, and next year we shall see you all hard at it. What a good woman Mrs. Taylor is! Ain't she? And the sad part of it is, she can't do and enjoy all she wants to, because her health is so poor. She was a country girl, you know, and went to work in the city as waiter in a boarding house. A rich man fell in love with her and married her, and she took care of him for years, and he left her all his money. She was quite broken down, but she wanted to make his name loved and honored after his death, as he hadn't done any good while he lived, so she gives away heaps, and is never tired of helping poor folks and doing all sorts of grand things to make the world better. I call that splendid. So do I, yet it is only what you are doing in a small way, Becky, said Mrs. Spencer, as the girl paused out of breath. Mrs. Taylor clears the stones out of people's paths, making their road easier to climb than hers has been, and leaving behind her fruitful fields for others to reap. This is a better work than making verses, for it is the real poetry of life, and brings to those who give themselves to it, no matter in what humble ways, something sweeter than fame and more enduring than fortune. So it does! I see that now, and know why we love Father as we do, and want to keep what he worked so hard to give us. He used to say every stone cleared away was just so much help to the boys, and he used to tell me his plans as I trotted after him round the farm, helping all I could, being the oldest, and like him, he said. Becky paused with full eyes, for not even to these good friends could she ever tell the shifts and struggles in which she had bravely borne her part during the long hard years that had wrested the little homestead from the stony-hearted hills. The musical chime of a distant clock reminded her that supper time was near, and she sprang up as if much refreshed by this pleasant rest by the wayside. As she pulled out her handkerchief, a little roll of pale blue ribbon fell from her pocket, and Emily caught it up, exclaiming mischievously, "Are you going to make yourself fine next Sunday, when Moses Pennell calls, Becky?" The girl laughed and blushed as she said, carefully folding up the ribbon, "I'm going to do something with it that I like a sight better than that. Poor Moses won't come any more, I guess. I'm not going to leave Mother till the girls can take my place, and only then to teach, if I can get a good school somewhere near. We shall see," and Emily nodded wisely. "We shall," and Becky nodded decidedly, as she trudged on up the steep hill beside Mrs. Spencer, while Emily walked slowly behind, poking every stone she saw into the grass, unmindful of the detriment to her delicate shoes, being absorbed in a new and charming idea of trying to follow Mrs. Taylor's example in a small way. A week later the last night came, and just as they were parting for bed, in rushed one of the boys with the exciting news that the railroad surveyors were in town, the folks talking about the grand enterprise, and the fortune of the place made forever. Great was the rejoicing in the old farmhouse. The boys cheered, the little girls danced, the two mothers dropped a happy tear as they shook each other's hands, and Emily embraced Becky, tenderly exclaiming, "There, you dear thing, is a great stone shoved out of your way, and a clear road to fortune at last, for I shall tell all my friends to buy your butter and eggs, and fruit and pigs, and everything you send to market on that blessed railroad. A keg of our best winter butter is going by stage express tomorrow anyway, and when our apples come, we shan't need a railroad to get 'em to you, my darling dear," answered Becky, holding the delicate girl in her arms with a look and gesture half sisterly, half motherly, wholly fond and grateful. When Emily got to her room, she found that butter and apples were not all the humble souvenirs offered in return for many comfortable gifts to the whole family. On the table, in a pretty birch bark cover, lay several of Becky's best poems neatly copied, as Emily had expressed a wish to keep them, and round the rustic volume, like a ring of red gold, lay a great braid of Becky's hair, tied with the pale blue ribbon she had walked 4 miles to buy, that her present might look its best. Of course there were more embraces and kisses, and thanks and loving words, before Emily at last lulled herself to sleep planning a Christmas box, which should supply every wish and want of the entire family if she could find them out. Next morning they parted, but these were not mere summer friends, and they did not lose sight of one another, though their ways lay far apart. Emily had found a new luxury to bring more pleasure into life, a new medicine to strengthen soul and body, and in helping others she helped herself wonderfully. Becky went steadily on her dutiful way, till the homestead was free, the lads able to work the farm alone, the girls old enough to fill her place, and the good mother willing to rest at last among her children. Then Becky gave herself to teaching, a noble task, for which she was well fitted, and in which she found both profit and pleasure, as she led her flock along the paths from which she removed the stumbling blocks for their feet, as well as for her own. She put her poetry into her life, and made of it a grand sweet song, in which beauty and duty rhymed so well that the country girl became a more useful, beloved, and honored woman than if she had tried to sing for fame which never satisfies. So each symbolical plant stood in its own place, and lived its appointed life. The delicate fern grew in the conservatory among tea roses and camellias, adding grace to every bouquet of which it formed a part, whether it faded in a ballroom, or was carefully cherished by some poor invalid's bedside, a frail thing, yet with tenacious roots and strong stem, nourished by memories of the rocky nook where it had learned its lesson so well. The mountain laurel clung to the bleak hillside, careless of wintry wind and snow, as its sturdy branches spread year by year, with its evergreen leaves for Christmas cheer, its rosy flowers for springtime, its fresh beauty free to all as it clothed the wild valley with a charm that made a little poem of the lovely spot where the pines whispered, woodbirds sang, and the hidden brook told the sweet message it brought from the mountain top where it was born. The end.